My name is Lamont, and I used to work at a morgue. Now, let me explain myself. So, I grew up in Los Angeles as a kid, and in the early, mid, late 90s, I was going around town acting stupid, spraying graffiti all over the walls, getting into a lot of trouble, getting constantly arrested, so forth and so on. So, one time I got arrested, I was about 18 years old. I went to court, blah, 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 usual crap that goes on. And the judge sentenced me to 250 hours of community service at the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office. The Coroner's Office is, of course, the place where they bring you when you die. They don't do autopsies on everybody. If it's an obvious suicide, they're not going to do an autopsy. If it's an obvious car accident where the coroner feels like, okay, he obviously died in a car accident, we're not going to do an autopsy. Everybody else, you get autopsied. You died of a heart attack, they're not really sure. It could be something else. They do an autopsy. So the LA County has one coroner, and then everybody else is a medical examiner. So I walk to the coroner's office. I go there, right? So I check in for work, and the first thing that hits me is the overwhelming stench of this place. It is a smell as today, right now, I can smell. It is just a horrific smell of death. There is no other smell like it. It just smells like absolute death. So I'm looking around this place. I'm like, what the hell? And I'm noticing them bringing in bodies, 3 or 4 bodies. And I'm noticing that quite a few of them are young. So one of the supervisors, he's like, all right, hey, you and this guy, his name was Rocky. I remember this white dude, Rocky. He's like, all right, you guys cut rope. So we're cutting rope that they use to tie the bodies up, when they bring them in. So we're cutting rope. I do about 2 days a week of 8 hours a day. So my first week, all we're doing is cutting rope. And then the next week, we're cutting rope, and then we start cutting the plastic. The plastic is used to wrap the bodies up. And then my next job, we started doing laundry. Now, they have these huge industrial washers and dryers outside, and we would be getting the sheets that they used to wrap the bodies in, and sometimes these sheets were absolutely covered in blood, just soaked. Some of the sheets we had to throw away because they weren't getting washed. Those blood stains were not getting out. But for the most part, whatever blood stains would end up on the sheets, that machine wouldn't get them out. So came the dreaded day where because they rotated jobs, they had some weird schedule. So then came the dreaded day that we were going inside of an autopsy room to clean it. I'll never forget this sight. We go into this autopsy room. There's this fat black guy on a table. This guy must have weighed about 400 pounds. Now, when they do an autopsy, they're going to slice you from your neck down to I believe, right to your pubic bone, somewhere around there. And then they take basically garden scissors or whatever the branch cutters. And then they plunge it right where your sternum is. And then they break that bone so they can get a clean cut and open you up. They're going to take a scalpel and make an incision around your head. And then they take your face and then they pull it down. This guy was lying on the table. His fat came all over the floor and just spilled like everywhere. It's like a gelatinous blob. It's disgusting. I want to throw up, be remembering it. His face was on his chest. And you could see like his eyeballs staring, like this. I was in awe. So I worked with this guy he was real cool, a total fucking stoner. So he has the wet vac, and he's like, like cleaning up all the blood and all like whatever falls on the floor. Basically, if it falls on the floor, it's gonna get swept up in the wet vac. So, and then you can hear like some of the fat get stuck. I almost threw up. I said, oh my God. And the guy took that thing and just kind of wiggled it in there. It was so disgusting. So sick. And then, we went to go clean other rooms. It was just, the smell was horrendous. So one of the notable things, or little stories that happened to me when I was over there, if anybody remembers this Heaven's Gate cult, I think those were the guys that they lived down in South Orange County or something like that. They all drank this poison Kool-Aid so they can all die and go meet Jesus in the sky. So they brought them in. Now, I think they came from down south. So I don't know why they were in the LA County's coroner's office. I think it's because there were so many of them. But yet they all did autopsies on them. And I remember them bringing in some of their bodies. And they brought them in on these big refrigerated trucks. And they all had black shoes on. That was kind of weird. And there was also a scandal going on at the time at the coroner's office about them possibly stealing human body parts. And Connie Chung, she was a very famous reporter at the time. I think she worked for CNN or she worked for CBS News. She had came in there. She was so little. She looked like she was about 4'5" and 70 pounds. It's the smallest woman I've ever seen in my life. Let's see what else happened. Oh, this is an interesting story. So I'm there, right? And the supervisor says, "Hey, come get this stuff out of here and go throw it in a dumpster." So there's this wooden box with a sheet around it, a plastic sheet, and white powder. So it's on a gurney. So we're wheeling it out, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, what is this? So one of the pieces of wood, I picked it up and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, what do you think this is? He goes, I have no idea. I throw the piece of wood down into the box where all the powder is, and then the powder came poof up right in my face, and it tasted like sour, and I like wiped my face. I'm like, what the hell is this? So we threw it in the medical waste dumpster. So a few hours later, the medical examiners are having lunch, and it was kind of starting to bother me about that powder because I was starting getting concerned. I'm like, what if that was poison? Should I tell somebody that what happened, that I inhaled it? So I asked one of the medical examiners, I said, what was that? Because I told him that the powder went in my face. He said, he goes, you should be fine. He goes, but that brother had killed his sister 3 years ago and buried her body in that box. And he goes, and that stuff that you breathe in, that was lime. He poured lime on the bodies because I guess it dissolves bodies quicker than, just regular decomposition. So I was, that was pretty interesting. Anyways, this one guy that told me about that, he was a talker. He would talk about anything and everything. He was the one that was in on the autopsy of Nicole Brown Simpson. And he said the only reason why he didn't cut her head off was because her head was being held by a piece of meat, like in the back corner of her neck and her spinal cord. He said if that knife were able to go through that spinal cord, he would have totally decapitated her. That was kind of interesting, that story. Also, the same guy who one day he was really usually kind of jovial and happy, but one day he was kind of pissed. And I was like, oh, hey, man, what's going on? He goes, I was doing an autopsy on a person who died of AIDS, and I stuck myself with a needle. He goes, now I'm pissed. And like when he was sewing them up. And I said, oh, shit. I was like, ooh. So hopefully he didn't catch AIDS, because that would really suck. A very, very interesting place. A lot of times when people like donate their bodies to science, like, the coroner's office, they get like pieces of it, and they'll I've seen them like dissecting brain, and it was just a mess. They also have a special, I guess you would call it a refrigerator. Now, I'm not sure, I guess if maybe these are bodies that just have never been claimed, and I don't know how long they hang on to them, but one time I don't remember why we had to go in there. I don't remember why. But I seen this body that was so decomposed. He was like bloated, slimy, and green. He literally looked like Swamp Thing. It was disgusting. I'm looking at it, and there was flies all over this body. And I can't even breathe right now when I'm talking about it. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, why don't they just, incinerate and throw in the fire? Like, why? I don't know how long they're legally allowed to, or have to by law, hold bodies. It's so weird. And here's another little fun fact about the coroner's office. Not that it's a big deal. You know how, like, when your loved one dies and you think that they're supposed to be so delicate with the body, like, oh, we're gonna care. Oh no, they're just throwing bodies like they're dead weight, just all over the place, all over the place. And the refrigerator, there's like several different fridges where they keep the bodies. I guess they weren't designed to hold as many bodies as the population of Los Angeles grew to. So they'll like triple and quadruple stack bodies. So there'll be a body on top of a body on top of a body. They usually try to put the heavier people on the bottom and then the lighter people on top. I thought that was kind of interesting how they would just like, and when they grab the body, they don't, it's not like, they're carrying their sick uncle. They'll just just grab them and slam them on the table. That was an experience that I will never, ever forget. Well, I did my 250 hours and I was done. And I never went back to that place ever again. But I will. I want to do a video back at that place. Now, back in those days, if somebody worked there and they knew what they were doing, you could literally walk off the street. You can get off at a bus stop, walk right up into the building, into an autopsy room. Nobody's going to stop you. Nobody's going to ask you for ID because they're assuming that you're like a community service worker. So if somebody told you, oh, hey, just go to some store and buy a green band and just don't even show it to them. Just walk right in there. You could. I don't know if I could do that now, but it'd be interesting to try. Anyways, this is Black Bigot. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Peace out.